MyStaticAge. Who the man? I was going to say, but no, I'm going to say George Formby. X-File 2708, and congratulations to you on your 500. I've been watching your videos, and but you're up to 6 at the point that I'm recording this, so I don't know how many you're going to have, but I understand now completely why you've got so many. Because this is going to be huge. There's just so much footage. Where to cram it all in? So what have you asked? Hang on. Hardest console to get hold of. That's an interesting question, because there are the ones that are the rarest, but they weren't necessarily the hardest to get hold of. Like the Jupiter Ace, I figured that's the rarest one there. It should be the hardest, except that I wasn't looking, so it wasn't hard. One came up, I bid, and I won. So it wasn't hard at all. The hardest, I think, was the ColecoVision, because I decided I wanted one of those, and I kept looking and looking and looking, and they just weren't coming up. And then Andrea got one for me. There were none in Britain on sale at that time. You just couldn't find them, and Andrea got me my one, and she got it from Germany. That was the only one on eBay at the time, and they shipped it over. You know, she took a chance, because we didn't know if... Well, she didn't know, because she kind of... I think she hinted that she was getting or whatever, and you know, there was the question, are power supplies different, are plugs different, what TV format do they use? And it's interesting, when I'm looking at mine, I don't know what the on-off positions on it are, because they're in German, and the translation, as far as I can tell, on the on-off switch is in and out instead of on and off, which is kind of curious. And all the writing on it is Anschluss aus yeah, something, I can't read that. Yeah, so that was, I think, the hardest. Remind me of a wacky school teacher. No, I take no offence at that. I find that highly amusing. Now sit straight in your chair. You at the back, stop talking. What was my favourite subject at school? Art. Easily. Way my favourite, because I was good at it. I won't say I did badly in school. I was not happy in school. I didn't fit in. I was a complete oddball. Obviously I'm not these days. But I struggled in some lessons. I struggled in maths. My God, I hated it. We had one teacher who was completely intimidating. You didn't dare... Well, it was terrifying. If you got the answer wrong, which I invariably did, because I can't do mental arithmetic at all. In my head, no chance. And in his lesson, you had to do it in your head. And his solution, when you got the answer wrong, was to intimidate you and mock you and make a fool of you in front of the class, which I think is appalling, and really, that is not the way to teach. So I did very badly in that. But in art, I was not top of the class. I was probably second best in my class, and it was great because I could get away with stuff in there. I could mess around a little bit and sort of do my own thing, because the teacher knew that I was good, and if I wasn't doing exactly what she told me to, it was because I was doing something that I thought was better, and it generally was. And there was this thing in art as well. I would not ever draw something. Various art teachers, and even my main art teacher, until she realised it wasn't working, they would get an object, stick it in front of you and say, draw that. And I would always say no, and draw something completely different. Usually something in my head. I could not see the point of drawing an object you could pick up and see. If you can see it, what's the point of drawing it? I would draw the stuff that was in my head, which was invariably slightly weird and surreal, which is why I like Salvador Dali, as I mentioned earlier. I like surreal art. So yes, that was my favourite by a long way. I was good at technical drawing as well, and I enjoyed biology. And for 1 year, when we had this one really good teacher, I liked RE, religious education, because for this 1 year, in fact it was one term, it wasn't all about religion, because I totally reject all organised religion. I think the whole lot. No. but we were doing stuff for this one term that was more about your perception of the way the world and the universe works, and that's something I'm into in a very big way, because I don't think it's nearly as straightforward as everyone thinks it is. So yeah, I talk about straying from the point. Art, that's my favourite lesson. God, I'm going to need to do this in so many little episodes. ArcadeMeister. My God, you're being greedy here. 10. Okay. Have you ever been abroad? No. Never. The only time I've been off the mainland was to go to the Isle of Wight, and that doesn't count as abroad. And the only time I've been outside of England was when I was in Wales. And I like Wales, but I like the Isle of Wight as well, so I couldn't tell you which was my favourite. Though I haven't been to the Isle of Wight since I was a kid. If you could name only one, which relatively unknown channel would you recommend us to watch? Gaming or just generally? You see, general channels, I don't know any little relatively unknown channels. I only watch the really, really big ones, like Community Channel. That is just hysterically funny. Okay, not so much of a recommendation. This is a channel of someone who is thinking about starting doing gaming videos. They're kind of umming and ahhing, and I think need a little bit of support just so they can decide whether or not it's worth doing. And I think it would be really cool if they did, because they speak well on camera and they're a fairly interesting character. And that is Roxy Girl 1188. Show her some love. Give her a bit of encouragement. How do I think the gaming world will change in the next 10 years? Processor speeds will go up, graphic resolutions will probably increase. I hope we go 3D. I hope we lose all this stupid wave it around motion sensing bullshit. Games will become more expensive, and then people will stop buying them, and then they'll get cheaper again, and there will be court cases for violence and obscenity, and we might get 3D goggly things. I think it will just be the same but more. I also think there will be another crash. I can't give you a reason. We've had 2 crashes already. There was one at the end of the 70s, which most people didn't really notice. There was the one in the 80s, which Britain kind of avoided because we had computer games. But I think we're going to have another crash. And I think it's going to be because consoles are getting too complicated. Could you answer the bits question I asked in PM? Okay. ArcadeMeister asked me, what is this 16-bit, 32-bit, 8-bit business on computers and consoles? What's that all about, and how many bits are we at the moment? And it's a good question. It had never occurred to me that there were people who didn't know what that was all about, but I think unless you were of a certain age and probably got into the whole computer thingy at the start, you wouldn't know, unless you're into computer science anyway, and then you'll know. So anyway, yes, the whole bits thing is binary code that computers run on. It's all noughts and ones, and a naught or a one is called a bit, and there are 8 bits in a byte, and a byte is like the word that a CPU uses. It's the language you talk to a computer in machine code. It's a whole series of 8-digit 0 or 1 words, like, I don't know, 0010001, you know, like Bender talks sometimes on Futurama. So yeah, and originally computers could only talk in 8-bit bytes, or words if you like. But later on they came up with computers that could talk in, that they could take 2 bytes, I suppose, they could take them together, they could take the code in larger chunks. So while bytes remained 8 bits, they could be computers could handle more of them in one go. And so that went up from 8 to 16 to 32 to 64, and you know, you could just basically cram more code down the pipe, so to speak. We're currently, like the PS3 and the Xbox 360, are 64-bit, which sounds surprising when you consider the Dreamcast was 128-bit. You would then think, well, surely they've taken a step backwards, or the Dreamcast should be more powerful or something. But it doesn't work that way, because while you can have a console like the Dreamcast that is 128-bit, it is not advanced in the actual architecture of the CPU. Clock speeds can be higher. Both the PS3 and the 360 are multi-core, so it's like you've got umpteen different CPUs all on one chip, or something very similar to that. And then you've got multi-threading, where it can run more than one data stream through one core at the same time, and all kinds of stuff like that. There are lots of ways you can make a CPU run faster without handling more bits at a time. I don't explain it well, and I'm sure more technically minded people and probably programmers could explain it better. And I am a little bit vague on how many bytes a CPU can take at one time. See, I don't know if they called it words when they crammed 2 bytes together for a 16-bit. But anyway, yes, that is what it's all about, really. Did any of that make any sense? Okay, probably not.